Hello crew, how's it going? My name's Ben and welcome aboard the Bonny Rackham for episode 3 of the Black Sails podcast. Okay, yes, so we are on now to season 1, episode 3. So yeah, let's get to our first item and our first business of call, and that is giving this a title.
First item.
Yeah, so this one, I kind of struggled to think of for a title. I was going to go for something that kind of worked. I was going to go for Broken, because the last episode I called Wrecked, and I thought Broken might work. Kind of a continuation on from Wrecked, but I don't know. I think there may be stronger episodes that Broken, if we need a cop-out, that might be one. Ultimately, I ended with this one. Obviously, we get into Miranda a lot more in this one, and she features in scenes with 3 different men in this one. And it features 3 different books. And obviously we know books are going to play a big part in, especially, mainly her and Flint's kind of story and all that stuff and tie-in with Thomas. So I went with it seems easy on the page, I went with chapter 3. Because, yeah, she speaks to 3 different men, 3 different books kind of mentioned or brought up. And it's the 3rd episode. So, yeah, it's kind of obvious, but it's also a little bit deeper. Chapter 3, this one is called.
Item.
Alright, so let's get into a deep dive of this episode. Yeah, this is a lot of little bits going on and a lot of stuff that will come up in the future and is putting little seeds. Little seeds are being planted in this one, and there's quite a good bit of character development. Let's get into this one. So yeah, okay, so it's still written by Jonathan Steinberg and Robert Levine. And this one, we're back again to being directed by Neil Marshall. He did the first episode. Okay, so we start, so obviously last episode we got the tease of Miranda, who obviously at this point you'd have no idea who she is and what she is to Flint. So he awakens in the house and Miranda tends to his bandages. The house is cosy, but it's modest. Miranda herself is also dressed very modestly, you know, there's no colours or expensive garments. She clearly doesn't want to stand out, you know, and we'll see that a little bit more as this episode kind of goes on. Yeah, they have a little conversation. She says a neighbour spotted him arrive last night, and now someone is spying on them. And Flint asks if it's the crone with the crooked nose, and she says she passed. So, you know, it's obviously been a little while since he's been there, since he's been back. She mentions Pastor Lambrick, or it's going to be someone on his behalf that's probably snooping. Yeah, so obviously that little seed is sown, and we'll get to that in a little bit more detail in a bit. And Flint says all he needs to say is, I found it, Miranda. You know, there's a bit of tension, and she kind of looks at him like, what have you got to say? And yeah, he says, I found it, Miranda, and she just knows exactly what he's talking about. We obviously, first time, not a clue. Not a clue. This episode, first, it's great on a rewatch. First time watch, it is one of those, like, alright, it goes by fine, but you're not deep in it too much. But really good one on a rewatch. Yeah, she knows exactly what he's talking about. And yeah, at this point, their relationship is, again, very hard to read. It's very familiar, and it does have, like, a tenderness to it, but there's also a bit of a coldness to it as well. There's kind of it's not brother-sister, but you're certainly like, oh, they're not madly in love, you know, there's something here, and obviously, yeah, we'll get into that a lot more, and that is all explained in due time. So right, now we're at Eleanor's inn, and yeah, Silver, obviously he stayed there overnight to be watched, and he's writing out the schedule. Eleanor she's just not impressed. Yeah, we'll get more into Eleanor this episode. She is going to have an episode, let's just say that. Scott takes her aside, because he comes in, and he tells her Max is gone. Yeah, and Eleanor seems surprised that Max might not have believed her when she said she'd look after her, and she'd protect her. And I kind of want to... I didn't go in on Max last episode, but I kind of like... I didn't give Eleanor a hard enough time, I don't think. I didn't make it clear that... I understand she didn't want to go with her and stuff, but she was very quick to... Oh, let's just get the boys in. She could have done with a conversation with Max first. She should have sat down, given her reasons, why this is important to her, yada yada. Instead, she just went, Max, I need the page. Oh, no, you're not for it? Right, boys, like, there was no... And then this episode, it's absolutely, if it wasn't confirmed last episode for you, that the feelings, it wasn't a two-way thing. Like, to me, anyway, the way I've taken it, it was certainly not what Max thought it was, for sure. Because, yeah, she's she's good this episode. She's over it. She's over that relationship anyway. Yeah, anyway, I just wanted to make that clear that, yeah, Eleanor's not getting a free pass for her behaviour last episode and especially this episode. But I do understand why she couldn't straight away just drop her life and go with Max. But she definitely needed a conversation with Max. Anyway, yeah, and you know, again, she's like, she chose this, not me. And it's kind of like, well, it's... You kind of both showed that this really, I don't think, has been... I do wish, yeah, we had got a bit more about their relationship and how it started and how long and that sort of stuff. But I don't think there was clearly much of a dialogue thing going on with them both. You know, there wasn't that kind of connection, I don't think. Yeah, so now we're back at Miranda's and Flint's. He says once Silver's transcribed the page, he'll be ready to go. And he gives Miranda, so this is our first book, you know, our first man, Flint, give him, you know, and discussing books. They don't really discuss this book. It's the one I think he picked out in the first episode for it, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it's called or if he even mentions it. Flint tells her, you know, oh, you seem disappointed, and she says, no, I was just hoping to have you to myself for a little bit longer. So yeah, it's been a while, and that's cut short though. They're interrupted, and he's like, yeah, kind of about that. So Gates has bought a still very worse for wear Mr. Guthrie to be stashed at the house. So we get a very short little Jack scene. He's in a tough spot. Obviously, he dropped the pearls in the last episode, and the men kind of all invested in that. And we are going to be introduced now to a... Ugh, hate him. Right, wrong, and maybe my most... Is he my most disliked? Ooh, Dufresne. Hammond, he's not named in this episode, but he is, he's horrible. They're not impressed with the loss of the score. This is where we learn, I think, anyway, that Jack is quartermaster, if, you know, we hadn't got that already. Again, the quartermasters are going to be important in this episode, both of them. And yeah, and Hammond says, make it right, Jack, quickly, as kind of a warning, not a request. So yeah, now we're back at Eleanor's, and this time the Walrus kind of little trio gang is there, Billy, Gates and Flint. Scott's in the room as well, and Eleanor's obviously there. And yeah, this is a funny scene. So yeah, Silver's writing out the page, no one's impressed with him, they're all just giving him looks, and he's just kind of like, no one's having it, they're all so angry and pissed off with him. He hands Flint the page he's written so far from memory, and Flint has a look, and he says, where's the rest of it? And he says Silver can't risk it, as they all seem to be rather angry at him. So yeah, he's again being super smart. He basically what he says, what's to stop you from, like, killing me now? If I, you know, what was the point of it all? What was the point of last night and doing all this? If I just give you it today and the same thing happens. Basically what he's saying. Billy suggests they bring Joji in to get the information out of him, you know, and we don't ever see a lot of Joji until kind of his final hurrah, I guess. But yeah, he's a fun little... very small character, you know, you sort of see pop up every so often. And yeah, and Silver says he has a low tolerance for pain and he'd say anything to make it stop. And yeah, he'll prove that that's a lie in a season or so, for sure. He suggests he remains with the crew. He'll forgo payment of the schedule in exchange for his share of the prize. And he says when it comes to the time to reveal the last piece, he'll be right there by their side. And then Flint counters. Well, when we've got it, what's to stop us killing you then? What's to stop me killing you then? And then, yeah, we get a funny little line from Silver. That's a few weeks from now. We might be friends by then. Really great dialogue, you know, obviously knowing just how far him and Flint are going to go. Yeah, Billy's not impressed with him. Gates is a little bit amused. And Flint's hard to read. There's maybe a kind of like... he's a little bit impressed maybe, but I don't know, he's hard to read in this little moment. So it's agreed. Billy voices his concerns and Flint says they will need another ship to get this done. Billy wants to discuss it further, you know, they think that this is all going a bit quick, but Gates is like, no, come on, he ushers him outside the room. And yeah, and then Flint and Eleanor have a little meeting where he's trying to, he makes some requests to strengthen the arsenal of the ship, you know. He knows they need 2 ships, they're going to need more guns and all this sort of stuff. Scott sort of looks at her and is like, no, as if to say, we haven't got this, we can't. And Eleanor she promises it. She says, whatever you need, you'll have it, basically. You know, you can see she's not saying it as if it's easy for her and it'll be there, but she's like, yeah, just, you know, it's like a, kind of like a mum saying to a child, like, yes, we'll sort it. She's not thinking it through properly. So yeah, Gates and Billy, while they're waiting, obviously while that is happening, they're chatting outside. Billy's still concerned about Flint. He says the crew are only pretty much a day past a mutiny, and hate just doesn't disappear, especially when the change is all based on a big lie. And Billy's worried about the wrong crew member getting to Silver and, spinning tales in his ear and turning him against them all. He says they need to canvass, but Gates makes a good point that doing that will arrange more suspicion and make life even harder for themselves. So yeah, reluctantly, Billy takes Silver off, and Flint asks Gates if he's sure Billy's alright. And Gates, nonchalantly, keeping it cool, says he'll be fine, and, changes the subject, whatever happens. But his look after Flint walks off, says otherwise. Gates has a bit of a tougher episode. We start to see things are starting to get to him a little bit now. He's been very cool up until now, and very kind of, Ilp's fine, we're good. But this is where things start to get a bit heavy on his shoulders, I think. Oh yeah, we get a funny little Randall scene. Billy asking him to watch over Silver, and if he yells off, to let him know, and he just goes, ah! He just gives a yell, and they're both kind of like, huh. Said my little bit about Randall. There'd be better points to make up that I think he's maybe a little bit smarter than he makes out, or is he? This is one of those, maybe he's not. So yeah, now this is in the inn, Scott and Eleanor. Scott's airing his concerns. He's very concerned that she's just said yes to this without thinking it through. He says they just don't have that sort of weaponry available. The name Bryson is dropped. Eleanor says he'll be due back soon, and we'll see more of him soon. And we get a funny little moment I always like with Eleanor that I didn't catch on my first watch. Yeah, where she's like reusing all the empties. Well, they're not empties. She's taking the alcohol, maybe the rum or whatever, and she's putting it all back in a jug. So yeah, she's a good businesswoman on that sense, on a smaller scale. When it comes to the inn, at least. But then when it gets a bit bigger, that's when it all falls apart a little bit for us. But I always thought that's a funny little kind of businesswoman type moment. Scott says once Bryson arrives, this is the last supply drop they can expect, as like news of her father's arrest will be known now, and others won't dare to return here. Scott basically says in less than a month the warehouse will be empty. Again, he is being the voice of reason. And this is one of those where his concerns do tally well with Season 3 Scott. Obviously I had my moan last episode where I don't quite think the writers had in mind what they really wanted to do with Scott in this season. But this episode in particular is one that kind of falls what I said about that a little bit flat, and you kind of can get away with it. And it's like, it kind of does work because he would be panicking. But yeah, again, I've done all that, so I won't do all that again. Yeah, and then Eleanor says, well, then my father will have to help. Yeah, Eleanor is she's disassociating at this point, isn't she? She's just like, she's not hearing anything. She's just seeing what she's seeing the end product. She is very similar to Flint in a lot of ways, but she sees the end product and she's not like thinking about the bits there. She's really kind of not thinking this through very well. She's put all her eggs in Flint's basket on a long shot, and she's feeling the pressure, but it's kind of like Gates has been doing as well. She won't admit she's feeling the pressure, so she's just like, yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah, and we get another little scene with Silver and Randall, and he's trying to fish information who might not be happy with the captain's turnaround in fortune. He's using a bit of reverse psychology on him. It's a bit of a short and sweet scene. Yeah, alright, so next we're back at Miranda's, and Eleanor is there now. She is visiting her father. Flint has a guard there watching him to make sure he doesn't interfere with the Urca hunt, or try and do a runner, I guess. She asks for his help and, says if they're to stay in business, then they need a new partner, someone they can trust. Says she needs him to trust her and that she can do it. He says nothing. You can say what you want about Eleanor. There's lots of different views about Eleanor. As you'll see, I've already gone through the meals with her already. We're only 3 episodes in. That'll continue. She is the most flim-flam character, but yeah, say what you want about her, dislike her what you want, but I feel like bad for her with this man as her father. Like, there's no love there, there's just nothing, it's just coldness. Like, he can't even barely look at her, do you know what I mean? And it's just, I hate him. I do not like that man. Yeah, you know, so yeah, she's just like a bit downcast and a bit like, fuck's sake. Scott plays the father figure here and, you know, puts a hand on her shoulder and like, let's go. Don't. But she turns, she feels that rage, she gets that Eleanor rage and that rash kind of... Yeah, so she says, help me or it's flee to Boston to beg your father and brothers for sanctuary. Says he'll be listening through a crack in the door to the room where the real business is done. She kind of reads him to filth a little bit. She says her and her mother made him into the man he always insisted he was. Reading him. She says, think on that while you sit here and pretend that helping me isn't the only choice you have. I know, I'm pretty sure he double crosses her, doesn't he? With Bryson. Goes behind her back with it. I'm pretty sure. But we'll obviously get into that when it happens. But yeah, I don't think this works from what I remember. You know, fair play to her nevertheless. I can understand it. And maybe it's been something that's been pent up for a while. He deserves it. He's no kind of father at this point. I know maybe near the end there's the argument. He gets a little bit back with her. But yeah. Anyway. So yeah, Billy's after Gates saying, you know, just leave it, it's fine. If you'll raise more suspicion if you go around, kind of. But he's doing it anyway. Yeah, it's in his mind and he can't let it go. And yeah, we briefly meet Joji. Obviously, he was name dropped earlier. Yeah, and we can see the two of Singleton's men from the last episode. We see them kind of in the background, kind of listening into things. We will learn that their names are Mr. Turk and Morley. They take themselves somewhere private. Mr. Turk, he's the one that's, you know, a bit rash. He's still a bit rash and paranoid. And Morley, he looks like he's more the sensible one and he's playing a bit of a longer game. So yeah, Mr. Turk gets a bit frustrated and he wanders off. And he sits down with Silver. And they chat about their suspicions about Flint. So yeah, on first watch, I wasn't sure what Silver's game was here. And it seems like he's doing a lot. You know, he's got his secure now. He's on the crew. I think maybe he knows things aren't right amongst the crew, so he knows if Flint's gone, he's gone, basically, is I think what's going on here. So he's trying to get in Flint's good books as well, isn't he? So that's why I think he's doing all this, and it seems like he's playing a smart game again, but he is seemingly making it harder for himself. Long game trying to get into Flint's good books, so yeah, it ends up kind of working out for him, so... Right, so yeah, now I get a scene actually I really quite enjoyed on a rewatch. Gates goes to the fort and we meet Benjamin Hornigold, or as I called him in my reactions, because I got his name completely confused when I was doing my after episode thoughts, Goldie Horn. And that's what he became known as. So yeah, if I end up calling him Goldie Horn at points, that's just force of habit. They have a really friendly kind of banter. I really like this scene. I think Hornigold comes across quite well in this scene and he was quite likeable. So yeah, he owns the fort that we're getting our first proper look at. We've seen it in the distance a couple of times. He's heard about the Urca de Lima gossip. And Gates says, yeah, you know, we need your ship and your crew. And he lays the offer out. And Gates says he will be captaining the ship. And that he and Flint share a sort of shorthand. You know, and they talk about Flint a little bit, and it's clear that Benjamin isn't keen on him. Yeah, they talk about history, and it's kind of where Hornigold has his kind of civilization is come in speech. We're getting these in all these early episodes. You know, this threat of the English and the end of piracy. You know, the end of this kind of life as they know it. We're getting all this really early on, which I didn't take into account so much on the first watch. So, and yeah, he says they're all just thieves awaiting a noose. Eventually he will switch sides, and by season 2 I dislike him, but at this point, yeah, he's likable and he agrees to help. Okay, and now we get our second scene, Miranda and another guy and a book, and it's Richard, it's Mr. Guthrie. They're alone now, you know, the others have left. And he asks who Flint is to Miranda, who they are to each other. She gives him a book, Marcus Aurelius. Of course, we know this is the book. We know what's in the front of the book. We know what's written in there. This is a big thing she's doing, and I'm generally like, wow, this is kind of risky. Because we know it doesn't happen in this episode. I think it's in the next episode where he's like, I think I might know it all, Mrs. Barlow, or whatever he says. I think he puts it all together. I don't know if he puts it all together. I don't know, it just seems a risk for all they've gone to, for all they've gone through, for all this kind of modesty and hiding away and not kind of living this life she really wants to. I don't know, it seems like a really odd risk, but it's great storytelling, obviously. But yeah, so that's our second book with Miranda, and that's probably the most important book. So yeah, Silver now points out Morley and Mr. Turk to Billy. You know, they're sort of walking through and having a chat with themselves through the market, I think. And he says, that's what's left of your mutiny. And Billy kind of says, well, what are you telling me for? What's going on here? And Silver says he wants to live. Earning his trust seems like a good place to start. So yeah, that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to build trust by kind of being untrustworthy. That's kind of how Silver works, isn't it? But Billy knows the crew well, and yeah, he knows the rumours about Flint. The rumours are that Flint's undead, he walks the earth without a soul, and that witch controls his every move, so referring to Miranda. You know, it's clear Billy knows his crew well, but he does say, I didn't have any clue about Morley though. So he doesn't congratulate Silver or anything, and he doesn't, but there is a little moment where it's like, I didn't know that. And then yeah, there's a funny little moment where Silver kind of does this on his shoulder and Billy's like, no, and he just shoves it off. So yeah, Silver's trying, but Billy is not buying it. So Gates is in an inn. I don't think it's Eleanor's, but he's in an inn, and he's plotting a course, and Jack comes to sit with him. He congratulates him on captaining the Royal Lion, which is Hornigold's ship. And yeah, Gates still not impressed with Jack, obviously, with all that's gone on the previous 2 episodes. Tells him to piss off, more or less. But Jack holds his grounds. He says as quartermasters, they do their best when they humour the men, like look past the bullshit and use their heads. But he obviously uses more words than that, being Jack. Yeah, Gates says he sounds like one desperate motherfucker. So Gates knows about the pearls he's lost. You know, he knows he's really down on his luck with the captain and his crew. But Jack, you know, smart old Jack, he kind of turns it all around. And, you know, he says it won't take much to lose that crew, that new crew of his. Basically, yeah, he says the crew, when push comes to shove and things start going down the wrong way, the crew will be wishing they had a younger, more experienced captain. And yeah, it definitely affects Gates. You can see that kind of in the next scene and throughout the rest of the episode. So yeah, Jack's done it again, sneaking around, spoiling plans, putting little words in ears. These first kind of few episodes, he's kind of scurrying around a bit like a little rat or a little mouse. He's very smart. We can obviously, yeah, from that, we can gather from that they were maybe had a couple more pints, a couple of drinks or whatever. That conversation lasted a little longer because obviously they've both got a little plan. And we see Gates, he's kind of looking a little bit downcast when he's walking towards Flint from the inn, and maybe even a little bit tipsy. He seems a little bit kind of... And yeah, he comes to Flint with a suggestion. Says he has a better idea for a consort, suggests Charles Vane, and yeah, we get just a great laugh from Flint. The only laugh, I think, ever from Flint. And yeah, and he realises it's not a joke, and we get that complete face switch. And he asks, are you ill? Yeah, Gates counters that the Ranger is a stronger ship, more men, more guns, and more importantly, the captain is strong in a fight. So yeah, it's Jack's words have hit him. Gates says without Vane, they don't have the Urca. And, you know, Flint says, even if I was absolutely willing to consider this, and I'm absolutely not willing to consider this, but he obviously is, what makes you think I would do it? So we kind of get that, and then we go straight to the other quartermaster, Jack, going to his captain. And we get the first, fuck you, Jack, from Vane. But yeah, Vane doesn't want to hear any of it, really. He's just got no interest in it at this point. And yeah, again, it's clear the quartermasters have done a little bit off-screen plotting between themselves. Would have enjoyed to have quite seen that, a bit more of that scene. Vane works out, though, that Jack's already told the crew, and that's obviously put Jack a little bit more in the clear and given him a bit more of a breathing space. And so, but Jack seals the deal by asking who else gains from this and might see him in a different light. And yeah, in this episode will really show just what Eleanor means to Vane. I see, again, with Eleanor is quite hard to read. I don't think it's quite as strong again with Eleanor, the same I don't think it was with Max, but there's certainly better chemistry there, I think. And yeah, so now we're back at Eleanor's and kind of Flint's in the background. And she asks Jack, what did you have to threaten him with to get him here? And Jack lies and says it was Vane's idea to come here. So he knows what they mean to each other, he knows what they've got. He's obviously seen it all before, so he's sowing seeds and he's putting ideas in her head. And and Flint turns up, and the board meeting is set to begin. So this meeting, such good fun. This is a lot going on in this. So Vane, first off, Vane just looks badass. Like, this is just Vane. When I said kind of last episode, he will, after this scene here, he will tumble a bit for a few episodes. This is him at his, not season 1 height, but this is him at his height for a little while. He's just badass. He's just sat, he's listening, but he doesn't say a word for a while. He's just playing with a coin on his fingers, he's just eluding sex. Let's say it, come on now. And you can feel that electricity between him and Eleanor quite early on. You can see it in this scene very well. But anyway, so he's kind of every so often he's kind of casting daggers at Flint, and Flint at the moment isn't even looking in his direction. Jack, bless him, he is doing his absolute best to be mediator. He's using lots of words and keeping it all polite. This is where I really started to like Jack. I think in my first watch through, I really started to notice him. Says he appreciates everyone being there despite recent events, and Flint detours and he brings up Messiah. And Gates frowns. He knows what's coming. Flint says he wants to hear Jack's cowardly fuck of a captain apologise for it. Gates was like, right. He apologises to everyone and he takes Flint outside. And he's, they have a fun little moment where he's like, I should have been clearer, that I need you to keep your temper in check for the meeting to happen and also for the duration of the meeting. He pretty much says something like that. And they go back in and we get a restart. Jack doesn't admit to Messiah, but says acceptance can be made for goodwill. Jack asks how much, and Flint says £10,000. Just obviously an unrealistic, ridiculous sum. Everyone, is getting a bit stressed, and Gates takes him outside once more. This time we stay in the room, we don't see it, but we can just hear Gates just yelling. We don't really catch what he's saying, but it's pretty funny. Jack disappears. I don't know. He says he's going for a piss, very delicately. I think maybe he figures he could do with leaving them alone for a minute. There's a little quiet moment, and Eleanor's not looking at him, and he's like, "Be honest. Are you as surprised as I am? I'm the only one in here behaving myself." She kind of gives him a little smile and a look back, and you're like, yeah, we know where this is going. Come on. We know where this is headed. There's not even Max, not even in her head. Who's Max? So they all discuss terms for a bit, which ultimately doesn't end up being important at all. I love Jack's, I can't do it. Just one more thing. His little moment, his little mannerisms. Obviously that's something I just love that, what's his name? Toby Schmitz, he does. Every character, every main actor does their own little thing for their characters. Flint has a lot of good little twitches and things as well. But I just love the ones Toby Schmitz does he does a little beard twitch sometimes, doesn't he? And he, plays with his brow. So, he does this just one more thing. And he questions Eleanor's part in all this. Says, who will enforce the terms? What's to stop her shoving them aside once more for a more favoured party, or if it doesn't suit her, whatever. And Jack suggests it's Mr. Guthrie who enforces it and makes sure things are kept fair. But she says they have her word, the terms will be honoured. And Jack is amused, and for good reason. We will see for completely good reason. And it looks like they're about to be at square one again, sit back down right, well, let's rethink all this. And it's Vane that speaks up again properly in front of everyone for the first time. And he says the terms are fine. Her word's good enough for me, and it'll be good enough for you too, he says, pointing to Jack. And he will completely end up regretting not taking his quartermaster's advice, completely. Vane shakes his hand with Eleanor, and again, really little sexual charge between them, he kind of lingers on for a little bit, and you're like, Oh man, I don't know if this is a good idea. Yeah, his love for her again is really evident in this, and yeah, I think Zach McGowan as well is doing a great job in this, because that whole scene, he doesn't say a lot at all. He get 2 lines, I think, isn't it? But he says so much in all what he's doing, and he's kind of nonchalant, he's cool. He's very cool and nonchalant when it comes to pretty much anything else, but when it comes to Eleanor, he's just... yeah, not quite so much. Doesn't think things through, and he's not quite as cool with it. So yeah, now we're getting Jack and Vane, you know, obviously leaving that meeting, walking through the market. We get Jack in his flashy cool sunglasses that unfortunately we'll never see again. And yeah, you know, Vane calls him too smart for his own good. This is where we're sort of seeing that a bit more. And Jack suggests to him, maybe it's time he cleans up last night's mess before someone finds out and all they've achieved just goes up in smoke. Jack waits outside while Vane enters a hut, and yeah, poor Max, she's naked in there. She's obviously taken some knocks. She's looking a bit bruised. This is a really hard episode as a Max stan. This is like, yeah, this is not fun times for Max. Vane says to her they had no choice. What she did required an answer. He knows what her and Eleanor were to each other, and asks that even though Eleanor gave her protection, why she still ran. And Max says, how did you feel when she threw you aside? And yeah, I think he feels that one. He can relate to her a lot in that one. And maybe this is why when he's back outside, he says to Jack, when she's ready, take her away on a boat. And yeah, Jack says that's not entirely what he meant by sorting it. And obviously, even though... boo Jack, I hate that plan. It makes sense. He is talking sense, and it will again show that Jack was right later on. Vane confident she won't come back because, yeah, I think he gained an understanding in her there, and again, maybe that's why he let her go, because he gets it. He gets that love for Eleanor, and he gets what he does to her, and he will experience it very soon. So yeah, he says to do it quietly after dark. It's an interesting Vane scene, you know, I give him a little bit of hassle for grabbing her in the... well, obviously he didn't grab her, but for obviously it was his plan to grab her and not let her just go in the first place, because I feel like she couldn't have done a lot in the last episode, but again, it's all about good form and, like, all that sort of stuff, isn't it? So, it's all pirate kind of lore and things like that. So yeah, so now we get a scene with our third book and our third male character that Miranda will interact with in this episode. She sat outside and she has dressed herself up. You know, she's still very modest. It's very modest she's dressed herself up, but it's all very deliberate what she's doing here. We don't know the means of it all at the moment. We meet Pastor Lambrick. He's one of those characters that we kind of don't see a hell of a lot of, and it kind of doesn't end up being much, but it's basically, yeah, she kind of knows his game. Yeah, she says, right, you've been here the same day every week, and I've grown tired of, you know, acting surprised. So yeah, Miranda and the pastor talk over the sermon, and I'm afraid a lot of that kind of religious talk is just lost on me. They're going on about this chapter or whatever it is in the sermon, and it's very kind of... it's sexually charged, and he's feeling it, and she knows he's feeling it, so she's playing that a bit. And as we will see, first chance that he kind of gets, and that she gives him the go-ahead, he's going to take it, and he does. So yeah, it's kind of like two people kind of feeling each other out, isn't it? And meanwhile, Richard is having a snoop. He's having a snoop around the house, you know, he's got himself a bit of strength. He finds the painting, and we see written at the bottom, though it's hard to see on a first watch, and I don't think I caught it, it says Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Hamilton, and in the painting is two well-to-do people. Yeah, I didn't really think much of the painting at first. I didn't really know what to make of it, and I didn't really understand it all. Yes, obviously that'll be important, but that's a part of him putting two and two together, even if I didn't. Yeah, so the pastor asks her about the Scarborough, and he has a little bit of a civilization his coming speech as well, but obviously more kind of relevant to him sort of thing. You know, it's all been kind of civil. It's all been pretty civil up to here. She knows what's going on, but she's playing it well. And he kind of asks, is he keeping you here? And that's when she politely, but she kind of gets up and is like, good day, Miss Pastor, or whatever she says. But yeah, she's politely saying, done, you know, piss off. Yeah, and once she's inside, that's where she takes the mask off. You know, she takes her bonnet off, obviously, where Flint took his mask off. Once he got in the house and he could finally kind of be himself a bit, this is where she does. She takes the bonnet off and she just kind of has a moment. She literally kind of has to support herself, and, you know, it's a lot. She knows she has to keep this up for pretend's sake and for just to kind of get him off her back, I think is what all that was about. And obviously she will get a better way to get him off her back very soon. Continuing on from that very sexually charged scene, that sort of more subtle sexually charged scene, we get a less subtle, Eleanor's down. She's in Vane's tent, and straight away, there's no small talk. They're just straight at it. Obviously, meanwhile, outside, Jack is securing Max's escape. This is at night, dark now, but sadly, Hammond and a couple of his crews stop him in his tracks. So we're now at the aftermath of the scene, and Eleanor's getting changed, and it looks like she's ready just to dip straight away. You know, it doesn't look like it was anything more than just like a casual for her. I don't know, like something she needed to do. They just had to get it out of their system. Maybe it was a last time, but it doesn't seem like it's, all right, we need to talk, let's have a conversation. She's ready to go. It's only when he kind of puts his hand out and they kind of share a little tender moment. But then Max screams, you know, we hear screaming, and just everything goes to shit. everything that happened in this episode absolutely goes to shit. You know, we get a little moment where Jack kind of comes in and like, problem, and he sees Eleanor and he's like, oh shit, he knows it's all about to fall apart. Tough scene. Obviously tough scene. You know what's happening in the scene. Really horrible. Just to kind of see Max going through that. Anne's reaction is really emotional and kind of, it's subtle on a first watch, and you might not even take it, but on a rewatch, you know, it's obviously a lot going on, I think, in her head. I think there's some PTSD obviously going on there, and it's tough with Anne because obviously she's the only woman, well, obviously other than Eleanor, but she's the only woman in the crew, so she's probably very conflicted and not sure what to do at this point, and obviously that'll play a big part in future episodes to come. But I hate there's literally like 40 men at least probably watching this, and no one's doing anything. Like, even Flint and Gates are there, I think. No one's like making a move to stop it. You know, obviously different times, I know, but it's still like, fuck's sake, someone do something. Someone call out bad form or something. Obviously Eleanor rightly, she freaks, she whacks Hammond, you know, I think she finds a stick or whatever she finds, but she doesn't just do that, she goes too far, and she goes back on everything she just previously agreed to. Eleanor says their crew is finished. They won't sell, buy, or eat anything unless they decide to elect a new captain and join Flint. And she points him out. I think all the blame, it's rash from Eleanor, because all this blame straight onto Flint she's doing, it's unfair, and I understand it. You know, I understand this immediate rage of seeing this happen to Max, even if they didn't have this past, you know. But again, let's have a conversation, Eleanor. Let's just take a second and have a chat, because if she'd had a conversation with him, she would have known he was trying to get her out, and he, you know, if she'd given him a chance to say something, he probably would have said, look, let's stop this immediately, take her, go, you know, to Jack or whatever. Like, it could have been resolved, but she's just gone rash, and she's just asked everyone to turn against him without hearing anything, you know, which, I don't give Vane a complete pat on the back for all this. I don't think he should have taken Max in the first place, but this is certainly all quite unfair on him, and it's just showing, she's just got no chill. She's done this 3 episodes in a run now. She's literally just gone from 0 to 100. And she's done this, and men start picket line, they start crossing the picket line immediately, and it's kind of, Vane's kind of, he doesn't seem, I don't know, he seems stunned. I don't know if Vane is maybe more hurt about what Eleanor's doing, and he kind of says, Eleanor, think about this, or something like that, he says. I don't think he's too concerned with himself at this point. I do think he's still kind of got Eleanor in mind a lot, and what this will ultimately mean for her, and knows that in the long run this isn't going to be good for her. Anne goes to follow, and Vane says, you move, you die. Yeah, and this kind of really makes me wish we got more Anne and Vane scenes throughout, because we pretty much... I know they're in scenes together, but Jack's kind of the main point of that. Anne's just there because it's Jack. We never really get any proper interactions, mostly other than this one. But yeah, they have no one-on-ones or whatever, no conversations. I know Anne's very little conversation, and so is Vane as well in some ways. They're very similar. But yeah, it's interesting. I think Anne's a little bit scared of Vane. I think Vane might be one of the only people that Anne's actually scared of. Because yeah, we've seen already there's no particular... There's not that love and... Not love, but that kind of admiration maybe that Jack has for him. It's not quite there for Anne, we see. But anyway, I don't want to tangent too much on that. Yeah, Eleanor apologises to Max, when she's got a moment alone with her, and says, sorry he did this to you. I think she probably means Vane, but she could be talking about Vane or Hammond. Max says, he didn't do this to me, you did. And Max turns to Vane and says, my actions cost you your pearls. Until the debt is paid, I am yours. And we get an interesting look from Anne as she leaves. Says a lot, yeah, that Max would rather stay in this camp, knowing now the potential dangers to her. What she potentially might have to go through, and what she sadly does bloody go through. That she'd rather do that than accept help from Eleanor at this point. Yeah, I think it's a mixture of still being heartbroken, angry, just surviving, and I don't know, you never know with Max, but maybe a little bit of plotting or a little bit of thinking ahead at this point. I don't know, or maybe it's good form, fair play. Like she says, she knows it's all been she's kind of messed it up a little bit for them, so she is trying to get back on form so she doesn't owe anyone anything. It's, it's hard to read at this point. And, they're to the side, Gates and Flint, and he confusingly, asks what the hell just happened. And Flint says, it looks like she just gave us a ship. And yeah, and Gates sort of asks, oh, who's the captain? And Flint kind of does this, and Gates is back at the helm, and, this time it's set to be an even bigger ship, and he doesn't look hyped. He doesn't look hyped. Right, so yeah, we get a little scene on the Walrus. Billy chats to Morley, asks him what his issue with the captain is, and kind of they talk about the page and about Singleton, and Billy stands by his lie. A small but very subtle Billy moment. I don't think... He doesn't like it, I don't think, doing it, but he's done it and he's got this far, so he sticks by it. And Morley says, all right, well, maybe Flint's not lying about that then. Morley says they're all disposable to Flint, and Billy says, yeah, he doesn't believe that. And then Morley says that's because you don't know about Mrs. Barlow. And that's where it's left for this episode. So yeah, we'll go back to that in the next episode, and yeah, we'll obviously learn more. But yeah, we get a lot of information, little small things that you really have to kind of catch with this one. Speaking of, we're back at Miranda's, and obviously, yeah, interesting that this is the last scene. We're going to end on bookends. With Miranda. She was the first scene with Flint, and now she's the last scene as well with Flint. So Richard Guthrie's reading Marcus Aurelius when Miranda enters to check on him. And she reads a passage where we see the fallout from what's just happened. And the passage, yeah, I won't read all the passage, but it relates well to what's going on the screen. I think the gist of the passage is kind of about choice. And we get a little moment, we see, she's reading it, and we see kind of our characters, we've just seen all through the episode. A part of it is, how lucky I am not broken by what's happened. And, well, we see Max, and she's in bed with some, random dude, obviously. Imagine after some things have gone down, poor girl. And I'm not afraid of what is about to happen. And this time it's Silver is peeping in on Billy and Morley talking. That kind of continues for a bit, and Flint opens the door, and Miranda knows, he comes in and he is vexed. Obviously, we now know why and understand why, and I am kind of with him. This does seem silly and odd and a bit dangerous. But, yeah, Miranda knows. She looks a bit sheepish, and I think she knows what she's done. I think Miranda is really lonely. I think that comes across more understandable now, after multiple rewatches. She's very lonely, and this isn't the life she wanted, but she's kind of committed to it, hasn't she? So, I think that comes across well, but obviously, yeah, not knowing. It's all a little bit deceptive, and yeah, she's kind of suspicious on first watch, probably. Well, I was definitely suspicious of her. Anyway, yeah, they go into their room and they close the door.
Last item.
So yeah, that was episode 3, chapter 3, as I've called it again. A slow episode to start that doesn't find its pace until the halfway point for me. Having faith, is quite a big theme of this episode, or faith broken. Captains putting their faith in their quartermasters, the quartermasters needing a bit of faith in each other. Even maybe losing faith in terms of Gates, losing faith in himself. Vane and Eleanor's faith in each other going through the mills in this one, as does hers and her father's. And yeah, Billy and Silver as well, flim-flam about on that regard. Then of course there's the literal element with faith, with the introduction of Miranda and Pastor Limerick. Limerick, is it? Speaking of it in length. But again, neither of them are what they would appear to be. It is another a bit of a plod-along episode, but again, like I said at the beginning, a lot of small important things for the future are being laid down, and a lot of clues are being given that are great to pick up on this rewatch. Anne says not one word in this episode, but her little moments for me are really interesting to go back to. Miranda and Flint's relationship and past is a huge mystery that we haven't even began unravelling and getting to the heart to. But so many pieces, again, are just unknowingly given to us in this episode, but without having any context for it, or knowing we're being given them. Again, on a first watch, I can maybe see in it a bit of a confusing slog and a bit of a slow plod along. But it was more interesting than the previous episode to me on the deep dive watch. So for this one, it gets a 7.7 out of 10 score for me. Okay, we are to the MVP of the episode. I thought I was really going to struggle with this one almost about halfway in, because no one was singing out to me. I just didn't have any major contenders. And then Jack had his meeting with Gates, planted a seed, and once again, from then on, he was doing all the groundwork. He just missed out to Silver the last episode, and while Silver is still playing it smart, and earning himself on the place on the crew was well done, and deserves a mention. Jack securing the truce and joining of captains for the Urca, getting in Gates' head, talking Vane round. He's the one that suggested Eleanor may not be the best mediator. He was right in all of that. I don't praise him again for it. I praise him for it, but I don't particularly like him for it. But suggesting, keeping Max alive might not be the best idea. I'm glad it didn't work, and Vane didn't take his advice on that one, but he was right. He handheld Vane and Gates through pretty much all of this episode. And despite it all blowing up in his face, again, it's not his fault at all. He did literally everything he could. So yeah, long story short, Jack Rackham gets his first MVP for me for this episode. So best scene... the meeting at Eleanor's, I went into that in a lot, so I won't go through it all again. Funny, frustrating, kind of sexy, and Vane's last badass moment for a little while. Best quote, nothing really sticks out. Vane's, from the same scene, be honest, you surprised as I am, I'm the only one here behaving myself, obviously it's fun from what we've all just got. And it probably does take my pick, I think. The reading at the end from the passage from Marcus Aurelius at the end works well, and the scene shown. But yeah, I think I'm just going to keep it simple, stick with humour, and go with Vane's rather than overthink this one. So yes, that was episode 3. I think this is going to be a bit of a longer one. There were quite a lot of good stuff to get into, with Miranda's character here. But yeah, excited to continue with this, and we'll be at the halfway point next episode. So excited to continue this, and I think this is where it's really going to start really getting into it, and these episodes are going to start getting much better and exciting. So I do think I have just ploughed through arguably the 3 tougher episodes to plough through, or again 3 worst episodes, but I don't like the word worst, just the 3 absolutely not as strong as all the other bangers episodes. But thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you next week sometime probably for the next episode. Alright, peace out.